Hello everyone, this is Rochelle Rosenberg. Good morning and good afternoon, anywhere you are in the world. Welcome again to our weekly reading. Shabbat Shalom to all of you, and I hope that everyone had a good whole week and Saturday had now arrived. So I want to invite you to this Shabbat podcast. So last week we had a wonderful talk together, and now as the week had been so fast, we are back again. Right. So we thank God for this past few weeks had been an amazing days, and you and I actually maybe have experienced different things. And let's go on to the Shabbat table page. Last week's Torah portion, Pinchas, ended with a description of the central sacrifice required at the tabernacle, namely the daily sacrifice of a defect-free male lamb with unleavened bread and wine, or what we call korban tamid. In addition to this special daily offering, various sacrifices for Shabbat and other festivals of the Jewish year were also specified. This week's Torah reading, Mattot, begins with Moses instructing the heads of the tribe of Israel regarding the laws of making vows, nedarim. A vow, either to do something or to abstain doing something, was regarded as binding before the Lord, though it could be annulled in certain limited circumstances. For example, a father had the authority to annul the vow of his daughter and husband, the vow of his wife, if he does so within 24 hours of hearing the vow's declaration. The Lord then commanded Moses to take vengeance upon the Midianites for their role in plotting the moral destruction of Israel through the evil counsel of Balaam of Beor. Led by Pinchas, 12,000 Israelites warriors, or 1,000 from each tribe, attacked and killed every male Midianite, including the archenemy Balaam and the 5 kings of Midian. When the victorious Israelites returned to the camp, they took Midianite women, children, cattle, and other possessions as spoils of war. Moses was not happy about this and reprimanded the officers for keeping the women alive. Since they were the cause of the plague on the Jews in the first place, Moses therefore ordered that all the Midianite prisoners of war were to be executed, except for 16,000 virgin girls. The warriors unclean by contact with the dead were then required to stay outside the camp for 7 days. To undergo ritual purification, the spoils of war were then divided equally between the warriors on the other hand, and entire congregation on the other hand. The soldiers, grateful for their miraculous victory, not a single Jew was killed, contributed 1/50th of their spoil is the Levites, and made an additional freewill offering at the Mishkan. Mishkan means temple. The tribes of Reuben and Gad and half of the tribe of Manasseh then asked permission to settle in the pasture land of Gilead on the east of the Jordan. Since they had the largest herds of cattle, at first Moses hotly disapproved of their request, since he feared that the other tribes would lose heart if those tribes stayed behind during the conquest of Canaan. However, when the tribal leaders made a vow to join the fight while their families remained in Gilead, Moses finally agreed. So, nedarim or vows, the words we use are important and it represents our characters. Lying and deception are indicative of unbelief. Making a promise to do something or making a vow is a serious matter, as the Messiah Yeshua taught us. You can find in Matthew's 5, chapter 5, verse 33 to 37, and then chapter 12, verse 36 to 37. Whenever we give a word, we are expected to keep it. It's also the same with the word of King Solomon that says that it's better not to say a promise if we cannot keep it. And this, my friends, my brothers and sisters, are very important and relevant in our daily lives today. So let's jump into the first question. So what does the word matot means? Since we are studying the Hebrew roots, we're gonna learn these simple words. The word matot means tribes, the plural of the word for staff. So it means tribe. So number two, to whom did Moses give the laws of vows? To whom is this vows made for? So now Moses gave the laws of vows to the leaders of the tribes. Numbers 30, verse 1. According to the Mishnah, this was the procedure with all the laws that Moses taught. First, he would teach them to Aaron and the heads of the tribes, and then he would instruct the people. You can find that in Exodus chapter 34, verse 31 and 32. Number 3, what is the difference between a vow and an oath? I know that most of us think that they are similar, but let us see what's the answer. A vow, in Hebrew neder, is a promise to do something or to refrain from doing something, whereas an oath or sheva is a sworn testimony that something is true or false. The laws of vows concern promises made to the Lord. Numbers chapter 30 and verse 2. A vow or an oath is considered a bond or a binding obligation upon the soul, literally a bond on his soul. So when you vow, it is like you are making a promise to fulfill something. And if you have ever made a promise, this chapter is for you. And if there is an oath or a sworn testimony that something is true or false, if you have ever experienced that you have created a story that is about a lie just to make others believe it is true, then this chapter is as well for you. If someone makes a vow to the Lord, what is required of him or her? When someone makes a vow to the Lord, he or she is bound to fulfill the vow. That is, he or she must keep his word and perform the conditions of the vow. You can find that in Numbers 30, verse 2. Why is it important to keep your word? To fail to keep your word or to break a vow is to desecrate God's name. The word translated break comes from the root halal, which means to profane or to make unholy. This is the same root used in the phrase Chilul Hashem, which means to describe the name of the Lord. Quoting to this, remember about the commandments that says, do not use the Lord of your God in vain. And this refers to how we speak or how we make a vow and how we also live. So, can an unmarried woman make a vow while living in her father's house? An unmarried or single young woman is permitted to make a vow to the Lord, though her father has the right to nullify the vow if he opposes it on the day he first hears of it. You can check that in Numbers 30, 3 to 5. So hearing from that, it means as well that a single woman can make a vow, okay, can make a promise to do something, but the father can say no to that the day he would hear that, depending if it is pleasing in their situation, maybe, or maybe in the way they in their community, right? Can a married woman make a vow? A married woman is permitted to make a vow to the Lord, though her husband has the right to nullify the vow if he opposes it on the day he hears of it. Numbers 36 to 12. Note that a widow or divorced woman is obligated to perform her vow, just as a man. That is in Numbers chapter 30, verse 9. Can a husband consent to his wife's vow, but afterward choose to nullify it? Means that can a husband agree to the vow of his wife and then afterwards retract the consent? If a husband causes his wife to break her vow, he will pay the penalty. Okay, so all of these vows requires that the vow is made to the Lord, okay, into the service to the Lord, and he are to pay the penalty if he causes his wife to break it. What does the phrase bli neder means? Bli neder. Okay, remember a while ago we have spoken about the meaning of neder, and neder is a promise to do something. Now, what does this phrase bli neder mean? Without a vow or without making a vow, often said post positively to avoid the risk of making a vow. What is the Kol Nidrei service of Yom Kippur about? The Kol Nidrei service is a legal statement sung just before Erev, before the evening Yom Kippur, that is intended to absolve liability for failing to keep personal vows. The Aramaic phrase Kol Nidrei means all vows. In Judaism, Kol Nidrei is used to refer to the entire Yom Kippur evening service. And if anyone doesn't know what is Yom Kippur meaning, I will share you what is Yom Kippur. Yom Kippur means that it is the Day of Atonement. All right? It is the Day of Atonement. So that is Yom Kippur. And Kol Nidre is a service, a legal statement song, right? So did Yeshua or the apostles recommend making vows to the Lord? Yeshua said that our word alone should be enough. Matthew chapter 5, 33 to 37, and chapter 23, 22. James warns that we are never to utter a vow in order to avoid falling under judgment. That is in James 5:12. Why did God command Israel to take vengeance upon Midian? God commanded Israel to take vengeance upon Midian because of the incident of Baal Peor, when Balaam brought Midianite women to the edge of the camp of Israel to entice and seduce the men into disobedience. Whoever stands against Israel stands against God. That is a quote from Rashi. What did God say would happen to Moses after the war with Midianites? So God told Moses that after the war against Midianite, he would die. That is in Numbers 31, verse 2. Why did God didn't command Israel to take vengeance upon Moab? God did not command Israel to take vengeance upon the Moabites because King David's great-grandmother Ruth was to descend from this nation. In addition, the Moabites got involved because they feared Israel. Numbers chapter 22, 2 to 6, for a total army of 12,000 men. Numbers 31, 4 to 5. How many men from each tribe went to war against the Midianites? 1,000 men from each tribe, including Levi, from a total army of 12,000 men. Numbers 31, 4 to 5. Pinchas, let's talk about this one. Did Moses fight in the battle against Midian? Moses did not fight against the Midianites because of the 40 years he spent there as a sojourner before the Exodus. In addition, his father-in-law Jethro and his wife were Midianites. Who led the army of Israel during the battle against Midian? It is Pinchas, the son of Eleazar the priest, led the battle against the Midianites. Why did Moses send Pinchas instead of Joshua in the battle? Because the one who began the mitzvah shall finish it. It was Pinchas who turned away God's wrath from Israel and first smote the Midianites, and Moses wanted him to finish the task. So remember that last week we have spoken about how Pinchas had struck the royal princess and the prince right through the belly because they were behaving unacceptably in front of the leaders of Israel. And since this Israel prince from the tribe had taken with him a Midianite princess, which was forbidden in the tribes to bring another woman from Midian. So Pinchas had actually turned away God's wrath. What weapons did Pinchas take with him in the battle? The vessels of the sanctuary, or it's called the Ark of the Covenant, and the silver trumpets. Why was Balaam present during the war between Israel and Midianites? He was there to collect his reward for cursing Israel through the sin of Baal Peor. How many Jews died in the Midianite war? During the war against Midian, not a single Jew was killed. Numbers 31:49. After Israel defeated the Midianites, why was Moses angry at the officers? Moses was angry at the officers of the army because they kept the Midianite women and children as prisoners of war instead of executing them as God commands. Numbers 31, verse 9 to 15. Why did Moses call for the execution of all the Midianite women? Moses called for the execution of all the Midianite women because they were tools used by Balaam at the incident of Baal Peor, which resulted in a plague that killed 24,000 Israelite men. Who were the sole survivors of the Midianites? Moses commanded that all survivors of the Midianites were to be killed, including baby boys and their mothers. Only 16,000 virgin girls were allowed to live. Numbers 31, 17, and 40. Does the Torah justify genocide? The Torah justifies genocide only in the cases of judgment decreed from heaven or as a safety measure against assimilation with the Canaanite nations who were steeped in the occult. You can find that in Deuteronomy 7, 1 to 6, 16, chapter 16, chapter 20, 6, and verse 16, 18. The first nation identified from annihilation was Amalek, who attacked the weakest among the Israelites as they fled from Egypt. That is in Exodus chapter 17, verse 14. Deuteronomy chapter 25 and 19. And Numbers 24:20. Can find it as well in 1 Samuel chapter 15 verse 3. However, the Talmud states that after the Assyrian exile, the identity of the biblical nations had been lost, thereby nullifying the commandment. That is in Berachot 28. What was done with the spoils of war? The spoils of war were first kashered, boiled in water or put through fire, and then divided equally between the warriors on one hand and the entire congregation on the other hand. That is in Numbers 31:23. The soldiers, grateful for their miraculous victory, contributed one of their 50th of their spoils to the Levites and made an additional freewill offering to the Mishkan. Which tribe asked to remain east of the Jordan? The tribes of Ruben, Gad, and half of the tribe of Manasseh asked permission to settle in the pasture land of Gilead on the east of Jordan, since they had large herds of cattle. What was Moses' response to the leaders who wanted to live in Gilead? Moses was at first angry that they would discourage the other tribes from entering the land, just as the spies did in Kadesh Barnea earlier. But when the tribal leaders made a vow to join the fights while their families remain in Gilead, Moses finally consented. Who were the first tribes that were exiled from the Promised Land? Those tribes that settled east of Jordan during the first Assyrian invasion is in 740 BC. Who are the 10 lost tribes of Israel? In 722 BC, the ruling city of the northern kingdom, Samaria, was finally taken captive by the Assyrians, and the exiled population later became known as the 10 lost tribes. Who said, "Be sure your sin will find you out"? And to whom was it said? Moses said this to the leaders of the tribes that settled east of the Jordan River as a warning to them if they should break their vow. So now we're gonna talk about the vows. And it's very important to remember that there are many vows that we have made in our lives. And it's very important to remember them. And if ever we have done things we promised and then we didn't do, I'll give you an example. There is a Nazareth vow, for example. Speak to the Israelites and say to them, if a man or woman wants to make a special vow, a vow of dedication to the Lord as a Nazarite. So in the chapter 6 of Numbers, there is a specific vow for a Nazarite, right? And with this follows specific requirements. So during the entire period of their Nazarite vow, no razor may be used on their head. They must be holy until the period of their dedication is over. They must let their hair grow long. And there are specific requirements that they should not go near a dead body. They should not eat specific fruits as well, as it symbolizes their dedication. And there are other things that they have as well to do with their hair. So another example is in Judges 11:30. Let's just go to that. Judges 11. Now, coming back to the 30, let's read. And Jephthah made a vow to the Lord, if you give the Ammonites into my hands, whatever comes out of the door of my house to meet me when I return in triumph from the Amorites will be the Lord's, and I will sacrifice it as a burnt offering. So remember, whenever you create a promise to do something, for instance, maybe you have said that if you do this, I will give you this, or I will return this to you. And then when that day comes, the other person had been waiting and waiting and nothing happened. In the sight of God, that is falsehood. In the sight of man, that is lying. And who am I to tell anyone honest? I cannot say that people are honest. We all lied in a small circumstances. We all tried to pretend that we have made white lies. But you know that promises are actually very, very life and character revealing. So always remember that when you say something to your husband, to your children, to anyone around you, you have to fulfill them. If you cannot fulfill them, it's better to not say nothing at all. And as for me, I have done many things about lying in my teenage years, and because I don't know the consequences. For instance, I usually say to my father that I was going to school, but I was somewhere else. I was skipping classes. And for him, believing that I'm going to school makes him suffer every day to go to work. He always try his best to give us food on the table. And whenever he think that I am studying, he always gives me money every day so that I could have it with me to the school. For that sense, I actually had created a problem in my soul, but I didn't know that the consequences would be so huge. And the consequences were, because I was lying, he could find me out at the end of the school year whenever they would check my grades. And guess what? They were all low, and I didn't pass the school. I was envying the first honors, but I can't complain. I can't say anything because I was the reason. I was the reason of my failure. And many times in our adult life as well as parents, we always say to our children to soothe their feelings that calm down and I'll give you this. Or sometimes in our anger, we say or promise to do things like, I'm gonna destroy this person, or I'm gonna uh, kill this person. But the problem is, these words has a big impact in our lives. Even if they are just a joke. Remember this, my friends. Be aware of your words. Don't you know that the words of God is actually the guidelines so that we can develop our characters and we can develop our lives. So at the end of this topic, I'm gonna thank you everybody for your time and for your effort. And I would hope to see you again next week. I will be so glad to see you again. And may everybody have a good week ahead. And Shabbat Shalom.
Takot ay balot nila naman ang kahapon. Tila di na muling makakaahon. Hanggang saan pa ba aabot? Sisihan din ang ayaw. Bukas ay magkakaroon.
Dumarating sa ating buhay ang hampas ng panahon. Paano haharapin ang binibigay na hamon? Hirap magkatayo, nilulumpo ng bawat laban. Dulot nitong pasakit, masakit sa kalooban. Kay hirap maating, ngunit dapat tanggapin. Hanapin ang liwanag sa gitna ng dilim. Handa kong tumawid kahit makipat ang tulay. Dahil ko silang nadamdamin ang taglay ko at gamay.
Sisihan din ang ayaw. Bukas ay magkakaroon.
Mga tinamo na sugat ang nagsisilbing lakas. Lahat ng dinaranas, alam na may wakas. Tapang ng loob ang tutubas sa pagsubok. Kinayang harapin, dagok at suntok sa sulok. Pagsubok na dumarating, kayang lampasan. Matibay ang dibdib, puso at isipan. Ako'y Pinoy, pagiging matatag. Hindi magpapagilang Diyos ang aking kalasan.
Kumapit sa langit, subukan mo na langit. Ang lahat ay lilipasin, bagong umaga'y paparating. Sisihan din ang ayaw.
Sisikat din ang araw at sa mga pangarap ay hindi aayaw.
Bukas ay magkakaroon.
Bukas ay matatanaw at ating tagumpay sabay-sabay isigaw. At ating tagumpay sabay-sabay isigaw. Bukas ay sabay-sabay ikaw.